Good evening and welcome to episode 14 of the Finger Lakes Golfer Podcast on FingerLakes1.com and FingerLakes1.tv, recorded live on Monday evening, September 15th, 2014. I'm your host, Jim Sinacropi, and once again I'm joined up here in the studio by the Big Easy, Bob LaPrade.
Good evening, Jim.
Wearing his invincible, who is that?
It's my Iron Man shirt.
Iron Man t-shirt, indicating that you did the golf league's over.
Yep.
You were home mowing the lawn.
Yes, I was.
Well, Bob, great show tonight. Very excited. We'll be talking turfgrass agronomy and golf course maintenance, a side of the game of golf that many players don't think about while they're out there playing their round. So we'll be talking to Steve Hyde, technical sales rep for Agrium Advanced Technologies, who's here in studio with us in just a moment. We'll recap Billy Horschel's big win at the Tour Championship as he captured the Fedex Cup Salty Grips. Find out what they are during Bob's Pick of the Week segment. We'll give you hole number 14 of our Finger Lakes Dream 18. And one of the many paradoxes of golf explained in our Zen Tip of the Week.
Nice.
So, right off the bat here, I'd like to pull the curtain back on what goes on in terms of golf course maintenance on golf courses here in the Finger Lakes and talk about one of the single most important elements of every golf course. Do you have any idea, Bob, what that might be?
Grass?
Turfgrass,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, think about it. And lucky to have with us one of the premier authorities in New York State on turfgrass agronomy, over a 30-plus, is that right, Steve? 30-plus?
Correct.
I wasn't sure if it was 40-plus.
No,
not
gee,
yet, not yet.
Don't hurt me, Jim.
Over a 30-plus year career, he's found himself on the grounds and in the maintenance barns of just about every golf course within 200 miles around here, so it'll be a perfect guy to have with us to talk about this. I'd like to welcome to the show Steve Hyde.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, we've talked about getting you in here for several weeks because I really am excited as a guy who worked at the Seneca Falls Country Club for 12, 13 years in my youth and into my early adulthood, and on the maintenance crew. And I love that side of it. I love that side of golf. And a lot of folks aren't even aware of what really goes into it or doesn't know much about the particular things that are unique to us in the Finger Lakes in terms of golf course maintenance. So been excited for this show, and so we have Steve with us. And right off the bat, Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into your career.
Sure. Well, that's a similar start to you, Jim. I started at the Seneca Falls Country Club. I started raking bunkers when I was 12 years old. I had a wooden rake and put it over my shoulder, and we would walk around, Mark Hilwa, my brother Jeff, and we'd walk around and rake bunkers on the weekends. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And working with Hank Syrup, the superintendent at that point, and he saw that I enjoyed it. So we, he kind of pointed me in some direction, and ended up going to school for turfgrass science and agronomy. Went to Virginia Tech. Now, I got to break away. How can you beat Ohio State with 108,000 fans at Ohio State and lose to East Carolina?
It's not the first time, right, that they've lost to the ECU Pirates.
No, it's crazy. But anyway, Virginia Tech grad, and then briefly sold equipment, and then went to work in the end, selling fertilizer and chemicals to golf courses. And what I do on a daily basis is it's a technical sale where a lot of times the superintendent is looking for a solution to a problem, and so we're going to look through our products and see what we can do to help them. It may be an insect problem, it may be a disease problem, and we're just going to look and see what we can do to help them.
Well, so primarily you're serving Northeast golf courses.
Correct. Yep.
And so what's specific to us here in the Northeast than, say, Florida and the Carolinas and even out west? What's so special about our courses?
Well, right around the Mason-Dixon line, you would have a transition. We have cool season grasses that grow very well in the north, and we have warm season grasses, Bermuda, that grow really well in the south. And so we're going to be on the northern grasses, cool season. The predominant grasses we're going to see on golf courses, we're going to have creeping bent grass, We're going to try to keep that on the greens, maybe the fairways of the finer golf courses. We're going to have low-grow Kentucky bluegrasses, and we're going to have some ryegrasses. We use ryegrasses because they germinate very quickly. We can see divots on tees with ryegrass. Out in your roughs, you'll have some fescues, and the fescues don't take a lot of inputs. They don't need a lot of fertilizers, so we don't have to spend a lot of money on them. Predominantly, we want to have bentgrass. The problem we have is that, and we've talked about it before, is that we have annual bluegrass that invades our desirable grasses, also known as POA. And POA is more or less a weed. It's very hard to get out, but if it's hard to get out, why don't we want it? Well, it's unfortunately it throws seeds heads up in the springtime, makes the putting quality difficult, and it is more prone to disease. It takes a lot of water, so even though it may come back, it may, at times provide poor conditions for play.
So, you talk about the POA, for example, seeding. So, Bob, in the spring, you've probably noticed it. One day you'll play the greens, you'll come out a couple days later, and they just seem to be bumpy and spotty and white. That would be the POA.
Right.
But in terms of maintaining a putting surface of a consistent type of grass, that's an expensive proposition.
It's an expensive proposition.
So courses like Seneca Falls Country Club and a lot of the courses that been around here for a long time, that we play every day, they kind of have to learn to deal with like a hybrid mix.
Yep, we learn to manage it because you're right, we're not going to have a pure strain of creeping bentgrass. A new golf course like Timber Banks, they're still creeping bentgrass. A couple of the courses at Turning Stone predominantly are still creeping bentgrass, but the rest of us have to manage a hodgepodge of grasses on the green.
And so if you are Timber Banks and your new course and you did a fresh plant of all creeping bentgrass, you're saying that over time, unless, like, what would a course like Turning Stone that has more resources, what would they do to maintain that?
Well, the one thing they can do is manage for the bentgrass, and what they do is they'll water less. POA needs more water. It needs more fertilizers. So if they can kind of cut the inputs, we'll manage to the bentgrass and keep it pretty much predominantly bent. The other thing is there's always research being done on herbicides that can actually take the POA out but leave the creeping bentgrass. And we're close to getting some that will work.
Nice.
So that would be like the holy grail, then,
it would. It would.
Well, you mentioned POA being susceptible to diseases. What types? And this is something that, Bob, you've been out on the course and you've seen turfgrass diseases almost every year, not only at our home course, but a lot of different courses. And I don't know, what do you think when you see that kind of stuff? You can't really identify it, but you, as a layman,
right?
As a layman, right?
Yeah, right.
But what do you think when you see that stuff? Is it shocking, scary?
Yeah, sometimes, when I think we had help me out here, when we had the burnout in the fairways there, when it got hot and the rain settled, what was that?
We had this year a couple spots of Pythium, which is a disease of real high moisture and real high temperatures and high humidity. And so our 16th fairway at the Seneca Falls Country Club seems prone to that, mostly because there's very little air movement there. So the localized humidity there is so high that it's prone to getting a disease like Pythium. But the diseases that we encounter mostly would be dollar spot, and dollar spot is kind of exactly like it sounds. It's a silver dollar-sized infection that is kind of straw-colored, and it can creep, and some of these spots can actually coalesce together so that you have large patches of it.
In most courses, or not most courses, the courses with more resources can spend the chemical budget on the herbicide, where others have to maybe ration.
That would be a fungicide for the fungus.
Fungicide
and you're right. Everybody has enough money to take care of diseases on their greens. Then the next sector, a lot have money to take care of diseases on their tees and fairways. The Oak Hills of the world, the Turning Stones of the world have enough money to take care of their diseases really anywhere they see a issue and want to treat it.
Right, so they're nipping it in the bud usually, probably.
Correct.
Now, what if we can deal with these diseases in fairways, and generally they pass when the hotter, more humid weather, and then when it cools down, they start to recover. But if they were to take over a putting green, they destroy the green.
Destroy the green, wouldn't be puttable.
Mainly because, is this true, maybe because the grass is shorter there too, it's even more susceptible to disease, or is that not true?
Well, it's the type of grass. Creeping bent grass and POA are a little more susceptible. The height that you're talking about makes it more susceptible because it's not very healthy. We cut the grasses down lower than their optimum growing height. So whenever you're doing something that isn't optimum, it's under stress. And when it's under stress, we're going to have issues. It could be a water issue, insect issue. They're just weaker plants, so they're susceptible to all these outside sources that could harm, the putting quality.
Well, speaking about putting quality, one thing I think most golfers take away first from any golf course is how fast and smooth the greens were.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's I believe that you can have a golf course that isn't really in very good shape, T2 green, but if the greens are fast and smooth, people will come back and keep playing it, and they'll speak favorably of it because that's where your scoring shots are.
Right.
So what are some of the things that some golf courses can do to create fast greens, and then some other practices that maybe they can do to create fast greens that maybe aren't budget related? Because everything's budget related, really, when you talk about the quality of a golf course. But how do you achieve the fast greens?
Well, and you're right, everything is greens. You don't have somebody down at the local bar saying, boy, I love the fairways at that golf course. They may like them, but they're gonna talk amongst their buddies about how good the putting quality was. One of the biggest innovations has been a roller. And what we do is we roll those greens maybe 3 or 4 times a week. And the roller is not a heavy roller, but yet it's a roller that will smooth them. So the ball rolls out a little bit. We'll gain about a foot on a stimp meter reading with just one roll, and then cumulative rolling, you could gain as much as 2 feet if you rolled 3 or 4 days in a row. So you'll see that being done. The other thing that golf courses are doing now is using turf growth regulators, and what they do is they regulate the actual vertical growth of the leaf tissue, so that the guy that comes in at 3:30 or 4 o'clock for the league is getting pretty much the same putting quality as the guy that came in at 8 o'clock just after the greens was mowed. So
they're not growing.
Exactly. So we get no vertical growth, so you're getting just a quicker green just because there's less leaf tissue there.
Nice.
Now, turf growth regulator also I've heard being used to keep the POA from seeding.
Correct.
Is that something that...
Correct. And that's a huge innovation as well, because you know as well as I do, if you try to putt on a green that has the POA seed heads, the ball is bouncing all over the place. A well-timed application of a turf growth regulator will allow us to reduce the seed heads down to almost nothing. So therefore we continue that good putting quality all season long.
Nice.
Do you know any of this stuff, Bob?
No.
Come on, you knew a little bit of it, right?
Yeah. Well, I've picked Steve's brain here and there every once in a while when we're on the putting green getting ready to go, but I don't know very much. I personally only like grass in one place on earth, and that's on the golf course. I don't like cutting my lawn.
Yeah.
My neighbors think I'm crazy because I put it on the lowest setting, and I just try to burn it out.
Burn it out so you don't have to do it again?
Yep.
I take pride in my lawn.
Yeah, that's good. Good.
Well, speaking of greens, everybody about this time of year starts to get upset when they show up at the golf course and the greens have been aerified. And I'm included. Nobody likes to putt on aerified greens, but it's a necessary evil, I suppose. And, explain to people why so they'll stop complaining about the aerified greens.
Yeah, it is a necessary evil. All the things we do to a golf course green compact the soil, and that compaction makes it difficult for roots to penetrate. It makes it difficult for water to penetrate, and by that, compaction squeezes air out of the soil. So that aerification does exactly what it says. We're going to get air into the root zone. We're going to provide a pathway for moisture off the surface into the root zone, and we're going to provide pore space where air can be in there. Normally we top dress with sand. The reason we do that is those sand particles are actually bigger than the soil particles, so we can create more pore space because those sand particles are bigger. So we create pore space, we get good infiltration, we eliminate that compaction, so we have a good healthy root zone so the roots can grow.
And then top dressing should also be a part. In other words, spreading a fresh layer of sand and soil on top after you aerify.
Exactly. Now, most people are using just straight sand, although there are some that'll mix a little peat moss or a little organic matter with the sand. But generally, we're using straight sand now, and it smooths the surface, fills in ball marks, but it also, again, provides a newer material in the root zone so that we have a good, healthy root zone with good infiltration. That's why you see new golf courses being built with sand right now, because of infiltration rate and pore space.
Well, I tell you, older courses like Seneca Falls Country Club and a lot of the older clubs around Finger Lakes weren't all built, all at once and with the latest technology. So, for instance, Seneca Falls, I know we had a 9-hole for the first 30 years, 40 years.
Probably till the 60s, yeah.
So, and then a new 9 was built, and a couple of the greens had muck brought in from Montezuma, but only a couple, like hole 10. Hole 10 really is the only one that really shows, still kind of has that characteristics to this day. But all the greens being built differently, that just provides even more challenge. When you're cutting grass, what's the height?
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of the golfers, and they know it's cut short, but they don't really know. An average golf course green right now is cut in 1/8 of an inch, let's say. So that's and they're doing it in decimals, so it's 0.125.
And you think you're cutting your long low bomb?
Yep.
You're cutting it in 1/8 of an inch?
No.
0.125. So, for the PGA at Oak Hill, you're probably talking 0.08. Unbelievably low. But again, you're providing the best players in the world a great putting surface, and they demand a certain speed. But some of the country clubs, Rochester, Syracuse, they're going to be cutting real close to 1/10 of an inch, and their ball is going to roll, on a consistent basis of say 11.5 or so on a stimp meter.
Wow.
Well, the amazing part is that this grass is kept alive at that height.
Right.
With people walking all over and hammering it with golf shots and all these diseases we talked about. So that's one of the most impressive parts of it. Just from going back to 8th grade science class, how does grass so short? In other words, when you're taught about photosynthesis and how they get the sunlight and the oxygen turned into carbon dioxide, all that stuff, that's how plants work. How can the grass even accept that stuff from the environment when it's that short?
And that's the tough thing. We're cutting it so short, there isn't a lot of leaf tissue. Without that much leaf tissue, we aren't going to have a plant that photosynthesizes very well. So one of the newer things that a lot of guys do now is use actually liquid applied fertilizers. When you cut your leaf so short, there's very little chance for the roots to be deep as well, and that's what we used to do, is put a granular fertilizer down, kind of let the roots get it. In today's age of cutting so short, we're going to have to put it on with a sprayer, spray it right on, and what leaf tissue is there can absorb the nutrients. But we can only put it down in really, really small amounts. So that's why we have to go out about every 2 weeks and reapply that fertilizer to keep that plant healthy. So you're right, Jim, it is not healthy.
Yeah, it's stress is a word that's used a lot. When I hear superintendents talking about the grass is stressed, and I'm like, it's always stressed. It's amazing.
It's on a fine line
all
the time.
So really, the superintendents, in my mind, you got the guys with the small budgets that work to keep their court, and then you got the guys with the big budgets. The stress is equal. There's expectations for the guy with the small budget to provide a playable, enjoyable surface for the members or the public. And up at Oak Hill, that place every blade has to be immaculate because of the size of the budget. So there's no matter where you are, you stress and expectations, I suppose. And not many people think about that. So next time that you are complaining at the course about your superintendent, just remember that it's a tough job, no matter where they are.
It is.
So,
Steve, I'm sure some of our viewers might be thinking, well, I've learned a lot tonight. I think I'm going to put my own green in at home. Would your recommendation be no because of the amount of work involved?
You did it once, didn't you?
I still.
You still have it?
I have probably a 2,000 square foot green in the backyard. I built it back when my son was about 13 or 14, he said, "Dad, I need a green." And so I did what Bob did. I set my mower down as low as it would go, and I cut a green and had a hole in there. And he said, "No, Dad, I need a green."
Right.
So so I built Harry a green, and it's about 2,000 square feet, and it's there today. And I don't do as much with it as I should, but it's cut. Like I said, most of the guys are cutting it 1/8 of an inch. I'm about 3/16 of an inch with mine. So it's easier to keep alive that way.
How often do you mow it?
I mow it every other day, and that's because I load it up with a growth regulator so it doesn't grow that much.
Right. So you have a hand
I have
greens mower or
right.
something?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. Yep.
Right.
I have a hand greens mower. It's actually an electric mower. A neat history on this. I had a friend that worked at Marion. Or his son worked at Marion. His son had a contact at Augusta. So Augusta was getting rid of these mowers. They went up to Marion. They went up to Wingfoot. And then I ended up with an 18-inch Jacobson electric greens mower.
They mowed all those other greens.
Yep.
That's kind of incredible.
And then they got to my place. So
yeah. Where it's final resting place.
That's right. But to answer your question, it's a lot of work, Bob.
Right,
It's a lot of work. You have to really mow it every day. You're gonna put fungicides on, so you're probably gonna have to get a pesticide license to allow you to purchase those.
That's sure what you happen to have already, so it's easier for you than most people.
So it's easier for me to do. But I think if somebody came to me and wanted a green, I would recommend. They've got some great artificial greens now, and that's the way I would steer them, because once it's in, it's done.
Right.
Yeah, the maintenance you can't believe, and not only that, but you got to water it.
Yeah.
It's. What do you say the budget? An annual budget for maintaining your own green about the size that you got?
It's I get I'll be in a barn of one of my customers, and I'll see a product that he hasn't used for a while, and I'll say, "You using that?" He says, "Oh no, you want it?" And I'll say,
"Oh,
yeah,
there you go."
Yeah.
There
so,
you go.
But yeah, even in my little green, probably product-wise, if you're going to purchase it, it's probably a couple grand worth of stuff that you'd have to get with growth regulators and fertilizers and insecticides, and then the things in the fall we put on a snow mold control, another fungicide to prevent snow mold. So yeah, it's all of a sudden you've accumulated a lot of cost and a lot of time.
Right. Yeah.
Why were you planning, Bob?
Oh, absolutely not. I knew what the answer to that question was.
Because you've already kind of looked into it, maybe.
I actually had in the house that before the house I lived in before this one. I had a rectangle artificial green in my backyard that was sand filled.
Oh.
But it was just too much work to pick it up and take it with me, because it had quite a few pounds of sand in it.
But it worked fine. You practiced putting out there on it?
That's about all you could do. It wasn't even big enough to really chip on. It was just big enough to putt on. It wasn't a huge green.
Well, speaking of your home lawn, how does some of the stuff we talked tonight, Steve, translate to the layman who's mowing his lawn and wants to keep up with his neighbor, John Nicholson?
Yeah. Let's say that Bob LaPrade wants to keep his lawn nice and not just shave it down and scalp it.
Right.
The first thing most people will want to do in the springtime is put down a crabgrass control. And this year is an unbelievable year for crabgrass. So you're going to put a pre-emergent crabgrass down probably in late April, early May, and usually that's with a fertilizer. And then, some people tend to over-fertilize. I think the best thing to do is probably try to fertilize again around Memorial Day and again around Labor Day, and usually that's all you'll need. If you use a good slow-release fertilizer, we're not going to get rapid amount of growth, so you won't be mowing it 3 or 4 times a week.
Right.
So good slow-release fertilizer, Memorial Day, Labor Day, crabgrass control. Maybe an insect control, a grub control, maybe in June or July, but we don't tend to get a lot of diseases on a home lawn, so usually we're okay. We're growing it more at its optimum height, so that we really don't need to put a fungicide down. And again, maybe a herbicide, spot spray a dandelion or something.
Right.
So.
What about aerification of your lawn at home?
I should aerify my home lawn. because I'm the opposite of Bob. I'm kind of a wacko with my home lawn, so it probably should be aerified, and that's the danger of fertilizing it too much. We create thatch. The thatch is a layer of decaying plant matter, and it is impervious to water. So if we fertilize too much, we get thatch. If we get thatch, we can't get moisture through, and we don't have a good, healthy lawn. So if people get into that point, yes, aerification is needed. Hopefully they don't get to that point, but yeah, it's needed.
Nice.
Well, before we kind of transition away from the maintenance discussion and get into the rest of our program, I just want to kind of run through for our viewers kind of everything that goes into maintaining a golf course, and I'll name some things and you fill in the things I missed. Okay. You're going to mow the tees and the collars and the approaches. Yep. Now, generally the tees and the collars and approaches are done at the same height, so you can use the same machine, but you're going to need at least two good tee mowers. Probably 2 machines, and we're going to probably mow them 3 times a week. Then you got your greens, which are mowed daily. I'm going to mow those daily, and they've gotten to mow them daily because maybe you and Bob and I can only play on Mondays, and if Monday's a day where we don't mow the green, we may choose another golf course. So the guys have gotten to the point where, man, we got to mow them every day. Because I can remember greens never used to be mowed on Monday, and then we started. Matter of fact, the course itself used to be closed Monday before noon, just for maintenance crew to be out there. Right. Oh. But the demands of the modern economy, I suppose, have kind of eliminated that practice. Yep. So you're mowing the greens, usually most average courses, a couple of ride-on triplex mowers. Yep. Some of your nicer courses will push mow still. And you mentioned rolling the greens. That's another 2-3 times a week. Yep. You're gonna, if you have sand traps, you need to rake the sand traps. A lot of that's done by a sand pro usually, but you usually need a little bit of human touch to make them nice. Yep. You're going to change the cups. Going to change the cups. Explain the whole process of changing cups. Changing cups, well, and that's that's a tough one for a golf course superintendent. You get the golfers that go to the same golf course, say 4 or 5 days a week, and they don't want to play to that same hole. They would like that changed a little bit. Yeah. But as well as I do, greens aren't huge, and so if we change our holes that often, we're going to run out of spots. So the superintendent gauges the wear and looks at that cup, and he'll go out and look at it, and if it's not worn, he's going to leave it. Is there a number of rounds? I don't know. Every golf course is going to be different. A newer golf course probably can sustain more wear than an older golf course. A golf course with bent versus POA. If it's rained a lot. If it's rained a lot, you bet. Scuffed up like this year, we've had times where I think 10 people would scuff it up because it was so wet. So, but it's a tough thing to do. People think it's just you throw that cup cutter in and pull some soil and the piece of sod out, and you go and put it in the old hole and put it back in the new hole. And to do it properly, you've got to do it the right depth every single time so that we don't have either a cup that's too high or too low. And you want to knit it together. A lot of guys use an ice pick to try to knit that cup together with the surrounding sod. They'll put a little water on it, maybe a little water and a little Miracle Grow or fertilizer with it. So get it to repair. Yep. And that was one of the fun things. It's actually a difficult job to do, physically and technically, but it's fun to pick the spot everybody's going to play. Especially when I was a kid, and I had a match later that day against a guy who played a big hook. I would put a lot of those pins tucked to the right, where I could. Right. But the general rule of thumb is 6 easy, 6 medium, 6 difficult. Is that true? That's correct. And we're also going to try to, mix up some front, middle, and back pins as well. Yeah, you don't want to play like 3 front pins in a row. Right. Try to mix them up a little bit too. Yeah. Okay, so we're changed cups. What else do we do? Roughs. Got to mow roughs. And roughs is a never-ending job at most golf courses. You figure a place like Seneca Falls might be 125 acres, and you probably have 20 acres of fairways. You probably have 2 acres of greens or tees and approaches. You probably have a little over 2 acres of greens. So the rest is some wooded areas, a building, a parking lot, but it's roughs. So you look at 80 or so acres having to be mowed weekly, and it never ends. Especially you get days with spring, especially it grows fast. You get rain, so that's the one job that it never ends. We're mowing fairways, of course. That's depending on the size of your fairways.
Right. And we're going to do that 3 times a week as well, as if we can, again, get on them and mow them 3 times a week.
Then you have to take care of the green side areas, or the hilly areas around the green that your rough mower can't get to. They need to be mowed, and I think this is unfortunately an area that is subject to budget cuts. So you'll see the bigger, heavier fairway or rough mowers coming right up to the greens. We used to maybe send a couple of summertime student workers out there with push mowers and weed eaters and really be meticulous about it. And now they do make some machines that operate around greens that mow a little nicer. But again, that costs money. But you agree with me?
Oh, no question about it, because we've got to make machines that can do things with a man riding, because we just don't have time for the smaller pieces of equipment and somebody pushing it around. So that, do we end up taking mowers where we shouldn't go? You bet. Yep, it happens.
So what did I miss? I think I got almost everything in terms of the main. You got to maintain the golf cart paths. You need to maintain your tee markers and your ball washers and your flags and your flag sticks and the holes in the putting green. You need to
pick up debris after storms.
Oh, that's a big one too. Can you imagine? As a matter of fact, we got a lot of wind on Saturday, and on Sunday I noticed a lot of limbs waiting for our crew when they got in Monday.
Right.
And what else you're going to do out there on the golf course? You're going to have to keep your yardage markers edged and painted, and your sprinkler heads edged and painted, your whole irrigation system up to snuff.
Yeah, and that's a big one, Jim, too. The irrigation system and the maintenance on an irrigation system is enormous. Figure a new irrigation system right now, if you put it in, is probably over $1 million. Probably the pump house alone is $130,000 or $140,000. So those things don't run without normal maintenance. So you've got heads that stick, debris in them. You've got a pump for whatever reason that it doesn't work. So there's a tremendous amount, and it's a huge asset. So you just can't neglect it. You need to spend some money and maintain those things. So you start adding all those things up, Jim, and it's an enormous expense on maintaining a golf course.
And that's the common theme that keeps coming up is, expense, how expensive it is to maintain a golf course. And, 15, 20 years ago, there was a boom and a lot of new courses were built, and it just became saturated. And as less people play golf due to the economy or due to time constraints, whatever reason it is, you can see why so many golf courses struggle now, especially up here in the Finger Lakes. Maybe not down in Myrtle Beach.
Right.
Or maybe maybe they're struggling too.
Yeah, they are, and I think we're overbuilt to a huge extent. You figure the state of New York has over 900 golf courses.
Wow.
And the majority of those are going to be upstate New York. You might have, between Westchester County, Long Island, maybe 100, 125 golf courses. So the remainder are all upstate, and you've got about 9 million people upstate New York. And I think last I looked, North Carolina had about 9 or 10 million people and about half the golf courses that we have. So we're way overbuilt. Great for the golfer because they can play some great golf courses for not a lot of money. Not great for the golf course operators. Real tough. Yeah.
Well, a fantastic discussion, Bob. Before we move off of the course maintenance, do you have any questions?
No, this has been very informative. I've enjoyed it.
Until next time you're out there on the golf course and you're strolling down a nicely cut fairway, you can think a little bit maybe about what goes into it and tip your hat or pour one out for the super.
Right, yeah.
Now, before we move on, Steve's going to stay with us because he's an accomplished golfer, Bob. You know this about Steve?
Yes, I do.
He's won the club championship 6 times at Seneca Falls.
Yep.
The other big accomplishment that I remember is when you won the Finger Lakes championship shooting. You won it going away in like 88-ish,
93.
93?
Yep, 1993.
And so, we're going to talk about golf, and especially during the Zen tip of the week, I want to find out a little bit about what he's thinking about when he's over the ball. So, Billy Horschel. Wins the Tour Championship and the FedEx Cup. He had 12 rounds in a row in the 60s. It's amazing. And, this is tough golf course.
Right,
These golf courses are tough. Just 3 weeks ago, Billy Horschel had missed the cut in his first FedEx playoff event to fall to 82nd in the standings, and he only had 2 top 10s all year. Not a great year. Not a bad year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, by pro standards, maybe, but Horschel capped off his improbable playoff run Sunday at East Lake by pulling away from Rory McIlroy early and holding off Jim Furyk late. He posted his 12th straight round in the 60s, a 2-under-68 to win the Tour Championship by 3 shots and claim the FedEx Cup and a $10 million bonus. And he was the runner-up in Boston, a winner in Denver, and he cashed in big at Atlanta. Those 3 weeks of prize money and the FedEx Cup bonus worth nearly $13.5 million. So this guy goes from being a journeyman concerned about retaining his card to winning $13.5 million in 3 week span. It's amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And that's one of the great things about golf. We watch all these other sports, we got guys like Ray Rice's situation and he can't play, and you got a lot of, where you get drafted, who you're playing, who you're coaching for, what system you're in. In golf, and none of that matters. You're going out, it's just you, and you're going to shoot a score. And so a guy like Billy Horschel, struggles and then gets hot at just the right time, and his whole life changes.
Right.
That's just one of the great things about golf, about pro golf that I enjoy watching. Is to see a guy go from just an everyday guy, really. I mean, he was on the PGA Tour, but to just beating Rory McIlroy and Jim Furyk, and unfortunately for him, Watson made his captain's choice picks for the Ryder Cup a few weeks early after the Deutsche Bank Championship, in which Horschel was the runner-up after chunking one into the water. So he had no reason really to pick him, but now, as Americans are trying to bring back the Cup after losing 2 in a row, you kind of want this guy on your team because, boy, he could putt.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this thing. For me, the FedEx Cup playoffs, I get excited for every year, and I love it. From week to week, it's great. It gets pared down. You're watching guys finish, and guys that aren't near the tournament lead have putts that they need to advance to the next tournament and stay alive. And that's all great, and I love it. Up until that back 9 at Atlanta on the final round, where they're saying stuff like, well, if Horschel can beat Furyk by 3, and then McIlroy can only break a tie with Ernie Els, then this guy will win the championship. It just doesn't make sense. At that point, it's just like a big math equation. So I say, let's go to match play at the Tour Championship. The FedEx playoffs, the final leg, it should get it down to 8 or something, and then that final 8 match play. But I don't think that'll happen anytime soon.
I think it would be more exciting, and you'd have more people watching.
But it would just be the matches.
Right.
The match, actually. The final. If you had 8 guys, or 16, let's say, qualify, then you could have 4 rounds of matches, with the final being maybe 36 holes on Sunday. And then you could have a consolation match and everything. But, even the Accenture match play, I kind of like the idea of it, but I never find myself sitting down on Sunday to watch that whole final, usually.
Yeah. Well, and it gets... I think it gets the networks a little worried, because if the right guys don't win, they don't get a lot of viewers, and so match play scares these networks, and so I don't know if it'll go to that point, but I think they got to do something with the points too, because somebody told me, and you may have heard this too, but somebody told me that if you had won all 4 majors this year, and your point total would have been less than Hunter Mahan's by winning that first tournament.
Wow.
But first playoff tournament. So there's something wrong. If you win the Grand Slam, it should have been a slam dunk.
Well, honestly, who in my mind is the golfer of the year? It's Rory McIlroy. He won 2 majors.
Yep.
And so this is something different, I think. It's certainly really impressive that Horschel can make it through that grinder of the FedEx playoffs, but in the end, it's a separate prize. It should be the Tour Championship. Like Tiger won it one year. He didn't win a major a few years ago, and everybody said, "Well, Tiger's back. He won the Tour Championship." Well, I know he played good over that stretch of a few weeks at the end, but so it's all about the majors, and so for the PGA Tour to try to create their own Super Bowl or World Series, they already have it. It happens 4 times a year.
Well, we were talking earlier on. Guys skip the event sometimes, like Sergio skipped an event, and he still could have won. And you would think if it's a true playoff, how could you skip an event and still win?
Right.
So it's a tough one. I still think they need to tweak it.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I like everything about it up until that final round when you start having to do math to figure out who's going to win. I just want to look at the leaderboard,
Well, you could have, you could have a guy get in triple bogey on the last hole and still win,
Hey, Horschel, because that was Horschel this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange.
Well, that's the end of another PGA Tour season, but guess what? It gets started up in like a month at the Fry's Open. They have some sort of early start to the year now.
It never ends anymore, does it?
No.
Boy.
Which is kind of good, I guess, because it gives you something to follow and watch. But, it does never end. If you're a journeyman tour pro who's trying to stay in that top 130 to keep their card, you're playing in as many as you can. And then, boy, what a grind.
Yeah, they're playing them all. They're not going to miss one.
Well, speaking of not missing one, subscribe and like to our YouTube channel. Click the red button or the thumbs up below, and make sure that you're not going to miss the next episode of the Finger Lakes Golfer Podcast. We're on iTunes and Stitcher.com, and you can also watch and listen by downloading the FingerLakes1.com app at the Android or Apple Store. And this will be very important, especially when we go on break for the winter. We got 2 more episodes left till the end of September, Bob, and then it's off for the winter, back in April for the Masters. So subscribe, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher.com, or download the FingerLakes1.com app from the Android or Apple Store. Well, let's get into it, Bob. Let's see what you got for your pick of the week.
Alrighty. We got to get a better picture. I look like a pirate in that picture or something.
I looked through a lot of pictures on your Facebook profile before deciding on that one.
I'm sure you did. Pick of the week, saltygrips.com. And it's not the website. It's actually what they sell, and they just happen to be called Salty Grips. And what they are is cork grips for your putters. They're harvested and milled in Portugal, hand-finished in Virginia, sealed with fly rod polymer for durability and waterproofing. So if you've ever fished and you felt the cork handle on the fishing rod, you get the same kind of feel. They're light. They're supposed to improve feel. And one thing that's nice about them, too, is they last a long time. You can sand them to bring back the shape if it starts to wear on you. I'm gonna get one over the winter, and so I'll be able to do a good review of it. But it also conforms to USGA and RNA rules. Cost is $34.95 for the mid-size, $37.95 for the oversized, and if you want to get custom engraving, it'll cost you $10 more.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the price is what made me think that this was a great product, because you can get a custom engraved cork putter grip that can go on any putter. Well, maybe not any putter.
Right. Yeah.
For $40.
Right.
For under $40, shipped to the door.
And if you like it, it should last you a long time. What I imagine in my head is that the feel is just going to be phenomenal. If that's
I was
important.
thinking about it. I was
if
trying
that's
to imagine what it would feel like when you sent this over for your pick of the week. I don't know if I'd like it or not.
Well, I've done quite a bit of fishing, and that cork transmits the hits, or if you're bouncing bottom when you're fishing, you can feel that right through the cork rod or the cork handle.
I'd agree with you. I think that would be neat.
Yeah,
But you can't. You putt with a long putter.
Putt with a long putter. Yep, and I'm sure they'll make one for a long putter. That's a great idea. I didn't know about it until you mentioned it, so it'd be something I've been interested in as well.
SaltyGrips.com has examples of some of the customization that folks have done, and it looks pretty sharp.
Does it?
Neat.
So it looks like a pretty good product. So you'll get it, then you'll do a review.
Yeah, I think one thing, from a feedback aspect, it'll give you a better idea if you're missing the sweet spot. I really do. But we'll find out. I'm going to get one and I'll try it out.
Fair enough.
A good winter project.
A good winter project? Buying a putter grip and trying it out?
Yeah, right on the rug. I got a rug that stimps about 4, so I'll give it a shot.
Steve, did you know Bob has a state-of-the-art training facility in his basement? Or that Bob does, yeah?
In my garage.
Yep, I've heard that. And
I wouldn't say it's state-of-the-art.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to maybe this winter making a couple trips over.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, me too. Yep. I think it's time that... Where else are you going to go in town and practice your game in the winter?
Yep, that's right.
Well, Bob, another good pick of the week as usual. Let's take a look now quickly around the local golf news here in the Finger Lakes. The New York Men's Senior Amateur Championship is this week. That's the New York State Golf Association event, Tuesday through Thursday at Cedar Lake Golf Club. Whereabouts is Cedar Lake?
Cedar Lake is in just south of New Hartford, so it's Utica area. It's a beautiful spot. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it's a neat place. It's got a huge lake, and they have about 300 cottages that the members will stay at. They come in the weekend, stay. It's really a neat place, and the guys will have fun. The greens are kind of undulating, so they'll be learning some greens during the practice round for sure. And
Doug Brown, one of our friends, member at Seneca Falls, is giving a shout out there, and so you can follow this stuff online too with the live leaderboards that they have.
Hank Sandless as well.
Hank's giving. That's too bad. I didn't know that.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, it'll be fun for those guys.
Yeah, Bob, we talked about it before. We got to get out just to participate in some of these events. The Mid-Am qualifier for sure. Next year we're already committed to. A few more years we'll go senior.
Yep.
But the senior, there's no qualifier for. You just sign up.
Correct.
It's pretty expensive, though, I think. $200 just to sign up.
But you're guaranteed a practice round and I think maybe 2 rounds. There's a cut after. I know there's a cut after at least 2, but... it's usually at a really nice golf course. I think they take the low 100 and some odd handicaps to be in the event. So
nice.
Yep.
Oh, so you sign up, and if your handicap's not low enough, you may get cut.
You could get bounced. But usually I think they usually are accepting everybody. I don't think they get that many.
Good. Well, it should be a good event to determine the senior champion golfer in New York State.
Yeah, that's great.
Speaking of senior golfers, Ed Krikovich, a guy that plays at Highland, I've known him forever, played with him a lot. He seems to play in a lot of the tournaments. And, Steve, I know you played with him for years, against him and with him. On August 22nd, he shot a 73. The thing about that is that he's 74. So that means he shot his age, and I just wanted to say congratulations to Ed on that one. Witnessed by Mark Solomon, Bob Mitchell, and Mark Cahill. Also some names that if you play in area tournaments that you'll recognize. So great big congratulations at Krikovich. That's always one of you want a hole-in-one, right? Steve, you ever had a hole-in-one?
Never had a hole-in-one.
Can you believe the 6 club championships?
Yeah, never had a hole-in-one.
Took Mark quite a long time to get a hole-in-one, didn't it?
Yeah, Mark Hillwood took, what was it, last year? I think he had his first
one ever.
Yep.
It's an amazing thing when you think of all the thousands of par threes. One of them's got to go in. You must have come close, right?
I came close. One of the closest times I came was playing with Mark Hillwood's brother Johnny, and I hung it on the lip. The ball was actually on the lip on number 12. I said, get closer than that. He knocks it in.
No way.
Yeah, knocks it in. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did a couple loops around the 11th green as he with his wedge in the air.
Oh, a little jog, went for a little run.
A little run, yep. It was really neat.
Nice.
Yeah.
Syracuse's 20-year run of hosting a Symetra Tour women's golf event is in jeopardy unless a new title sponsor can be secured. Mike Nichols, the chief business operator of the Symetra Tour, confirmed on Monday that Syracuse's Credit Union Classic is in search of a new sponsorship. Last year's primary sponsors, the Summit Federal Credit Union, Empower Federal Credit Union, SEFCU, and Wegmans, completed their 3-year commitment and ended their title affiliation with the event a few weeks ago. So we hope that they'll find a new sponsor. Kevin Smith of the Point Practice Putter had a few of his players were competing in that. Remember the one girl who went to the U.S. Open and putted better than everybody else?
Yes, yep.
Some local events and note coming up here this fall. You have the SFCC Scratch Series 2-Man Scramble on September 27th. Application and info at SenecaFallsCountryClub.com. $65 includes golf and cash prizes. And then the next day, on Sunday, September 28th, you have the Geneva Country Club Fall Invitational 2-Man Scramble. $100 entry fee includes golf, lunch, and cash prizes. Get your partner. Play 2 tournaments, 2 days. Seneca Falls, Geneva.
Right.
Pretty good opportunity. It's going to snow soon, Bob. So
I know.
The Dutch Hollow 3-Man, another great one up at Dutch Hollow. They have great tournaments, especially scrambles, and this is their annual Fall 3-Man on Saturday, October 11th. $75 entry fee includes skins, lunch, and dinner, and you're playing sixums for that one. Quickly, some hole-in-ones. Not as many as in weeks past. I think probably because the weather's changing, less people golfing maybe. But Barry Quinn aced the 154-yard 18th hole at Tuscarora using a 4-iron. And Joe Hessler, a member of Sodus Bay Heights Golf Club, aced the 139-yard 18th hole during a recent Rochester District Golf Association play day at Brookley Country Club.
Nice.
Send us your hole-in-ones to contact@fingerlakes1.com. Subject line, Finger Lakes Golfer, and we'll be sure to read it on air. All right, time for the Dream 18. We're up to hole 14, and we're not going to get to 18 by the end of the year, so our first couple episodes of next year will be
17 and 18?
Yeah, I think 17 and 18, but this week we give you hole 14 of the Finger Lakes Dream 18. Hole 14, and it is an actual hole 14 of our Dream 18, is number 14 at Bristol Harbor Resort on Canandaigua Lake. It's a par 4, 410-yard dogleg left. This is Bristol Harbor's signature hole due to the tremendous drop from fairway to green, which is located in a gorge of the Bristol Hills. So ever played this one, Bob?
I've played Bristol Hills. I was there for
Bristol Harbor.
Oh yeah, Harbor. I'm sorry. I played there, but it was a scramble, so we didn't start on hole 1. So,
but you don't remember the hole? It's a big dog leg left, and the second shot's like way down, which is fun.
You're teeing way up high. I think I remember it, but I'm not absolutely sure.
What's your thoughts on the 14th at Bristol?
Great hole, and it's amazing that you don't realize how tight it is around the green. You see how how big the slope is, but boy, you don't have a lot of room right. You don't have a lot of room over, so it's a neat hole.
Yeah, it's one of those holes too. The thing I like about a golf hole is when you feel like it's an only hole on the course at the time. You can't see other holes, and once you tee off and head down into it, it's like its own room, almost. Yeah,
it's neat.
So the 14th at Bristol, which is a fantastic course to play this time of year.
That's a Nicholas design, right?
Yeah, but a little nicer on the greens than at Timber Banks. Isn't it amazing the same guy could make both those golf courses? What are your thoughts of Timber Banks, Steve, the greens?
I'll tell you, the routing of Timber Banks, you notice I started with the routing. The routing at Timber Banks is phenomenal. You step on the tee, and it's just the way the bunkering is. Your eye catches it. It's wonderful. There are several of the greens that I think are a little extreme and make it much more difficult. Your enjoyment just isn't as much as if it was a little softer. So.
Yeah. Right. I mean, depending, that's the thing too, is that if you accept it, then it's you will enjoy yourself because you're going to have putts that you won't have anywhere else. Right. So you got to be able to laugh when you hit one on the green and you have an seemingly impossible 2-putt. It's at least fun to try.
Yes. Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to play there every day trying to shoot scores. Yeah. It'd be frustrating.
It would be.
So send us your suggestions for hole 15 of the Dream 18. It's got to be a Finger Lakes area course. It's got to be a 15th hole. Email us at contact@fingerlakes1.com. Subject line Finger Lakes Golfer with your suggestion for the 15th hole. 14th was a viewer suggestion.
Nice.
Which is always nice. I don't got to think of it myself. But that one was a no-brainer. Yep. I really like that hole.
Yep.
Well, You know, let's see how the ratings do this week. We're up against Monday Night Football now, right?
Yeah, what do we got? Who's playing Seahawks tonight?
No.
Who is it?
Eagles and somebody.
Yeah, we'll do fine then.
Yeah. And the Colts.
Right, yeah.
Eagles and the Colts.
Yep.
But one last segment, and then we'll head home to watch the second half. It's time for our Zen Tip of the Week.
Zen Tip of the Week.
Now, Dr. Joseph Perrin, author of Zen Golf, calls it one of the many paradoxes of golf. You need to give up control to get control. So when you try to control a shot, then you end up steering the shot. Steering is an expression of the thinking mind trying to control the swing to make sure we get the results we want. Paradoxically, the results usually range from not very good to terrible. So Dr. Parent suggests an exercise to demonstrate. For example, if you were to be writing your name, like we do millions of times, signing checks, signing forms, it's easy. But if you were to then lay a piece of paper over your own signature and were asked to trace it, it would become more difficult, and the results would be jagged, and it would not be as smooth and fluid. And so that's the same thing with the golf swing. If you step up there and you got to get out of your way to hit the ball where you want it to go, which is, it's very difficult. And it's something that I think that all golfers struggle with, and the guys on the tour are do the best at. The steering of the shot sometimes you get away with it, but in the long run, it's no way to play. And another great example is a waitress carrying 3 bowls of soup on a tray. It's a difficult task, but she doesn't think about the bowls of soup up there. She just goes about her business. And if she was to think about the bowls of soup as she was carrying them, then it would start to wobble, and she'd spill some soup.
Right.
So the tip is, don't watch the soup, write your name, don't trace it, and give up the thinking mind control. And easier said than done, but you know, Steve is someone who's played a lot better golf than Bob and I over the years, and has won several club championships. What is in your mind when you're over the ball? Like, what do you think about?
Well, I would agree. The first thing is the steering. Boy, I have trouble with the drive on our 13th hole at the Seneca Falls Country Club. There's out of bounds right, there's a pond on the left, there's not a lot of things good on the left, so I try to get up there and hit a cut. I'll start it left and try to hit it to the right, and but it's a steer. And if I would do these things and they say on the tour, trust the swing. Those guys got to trust the swing. We as amateurs don't get to do that as often as a golf pro, so we need to learn to trust that too. By the 13th hole, I know how I'm hitting it. You know, why am I so nervous? I know how I'm hitting it. Just get up there and swing. But boy, that out of bounds, gonna hit it in somebody's campfire, you know, on the right hand side. So, yep.
And it seems that when the further you get into a round, and now there's something riding on it. On the second or third hole, it's early, you know. But on the 16th hole, when you have a great round going, or you're 1 down or 1 up in your match, you know, and then the consequences become more apparent. That's when you may have been swinging fluid all day, but now you're going to steer one. Because in your mind, you're like, oh boy, if I can just get it in the fairway, then I'll be able to, you know, move on and finish this. And you get in your own way. Yeah,
we tend to think results a little more than we should. You know, instead of just thinking of what we need to do to hit the shot properly, we think, oh no, don't hit it there or don't hit it there. So we're more results oriented than we should be. Tough.
Yeah,
it is. And the way that I try to approach it is a student of Zen golf, and I'm frustrated because this year I talk all about Zen golf, and I think Zen golf has made me a better player over the past several years. But I just think I reached a point this year that I'm like, geez, enough of the Zen golf. I got to make some swing changes, and it makes me sad. But maybe it's because I'm getting away from the Zen golf, because when I was playing my best golf over the past, say, 5 years, it was when I would just look at the ball and hit it. If I wanted to hit a fade, I'd hit a fade. But this year I went into it thinking, I need a few more yards off the tee. I need to be more consistent with this and that, and then all of a sudden I'm making swing changes. Which, Bob, you love it. You love to make swing changes, right?
I love to tinker.
But I can't stand it. I've had a bad year overall on the golf course score-wise as opposed to my previous several years because I'm just tinkering around with swing changes, and I don't like it. Don't like it at all. Yeah, and part of it is I think that you have your swing. You know, by my age, I have my swing. You know, what am I really going to change?
Right.
So... yeah, and I'm just a little upset. Maybe I'm going to write Dr. Joseph Perrin a letter and say, you know, this isn't quite working out the way I planned. I was supposed to have 3 4-club champs by now.
Well, send him a video of your swing, too, and, you know.
He's not a swing doctor, though.
No, yeah, but...
he would ask me what I was thinking about when I swung that club.
Right.
And with all the Zen golf talk, including this tip, it's easier said than done when you get the people think that, oh, it's easy, it's just mental stuff. But you need to practice it as much as you would practice your swing.
I agree.
And so with that, Steve, I'd like to thank you for joining us for the past hour. It's been very entertaining and informative.
Great. Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun, guys. Thanks.
And we'll probably have you back up here at some point. Maybe next year. Maybe an annual golf course maintenance episode.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I'd love to do it. Maybe even the springtime after you do your opening couple shows. Maybe come in and we'll look at how the golf courses started off the season and can
Oh yeah.
Because that is key for us up here. Yep. You know how the spring is dictates how the whole year is going to be.
Yep.
And this spring wasn't so great.
It wasn't.
All right. Hey, speaking of spring. Or actually not speaking of spring, but the opposite of spring is what?
Winter?
Fall. Right. Opposite of summer is winter, Bob.
Yeah. It all melts together.
Get out there and play fall golf, okay? Yeah. The season's not over yet. There's 2 months, maybe more, maybe less, of great golf. In the next several weeks being some of the best of the season.
Yeah. Take advantage of the leaf rule.
Yeah.
Bob loves the leaf rule. You know what the leaf rule is, Steve?
I do. I hope not to use that. I'm going to try to keep it in the fairway and not have to use the leaf rule in the fall. But you're right. The courses usually, once the aerification heals in, the golf courses are magnificent. So, yeah, it's a great time to go out and enjoy golf.
And you throw in the fall foliage, and that's where Bristol is. That's a highly recommended course for fall foliage. And get out there. So we hope we'll see you out there on the course, and we have 2 more episodes left before we put a wrap on our first season. And so we hope you had a great time joining us tonight on the Finger Lakes Golfer Podcast, episode number 14. And we head full steam ahead into fall golf. We'll be back next Monday night at 9 p.m. Until then, hit along, not often.
Support great local content like this by becoming a patron of FingerLakes1.com. Visit patreon.com/FL1.
FingerLakes1.com